Hey everyone, welcome back to Motivation Library. I'm Steve Cole.
And I'm Sophia Blake, and today we're doing a deep dive into a book that's been generating a lot of buzz online.
A lot of buzz, a lot of
That's
controversy.
It's called The Enlightened Species by Nahashon Harrison.
Yeah, and it's not your typical self-help book.
Definitely not. It takes a look at modern relationships from a perspective that some might find pretty provocative.
So if you're easily offended, this might not be the episode for you, but
if you're open to challenging your assumptions and getting a different perspective on things,
then stick around.
yeah, because Harrison really makes you think.
So we're going to try to break down some of his core arguments and help you understand where he's coming from.
Sounds good. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay, so one of the first things Harrison tackles is this whole idea of the hoe phase.
Right. You know that period early on where women are supposedly exploring and experimenting
Supposedly.
before they settle down.
But Harrison says not so fast.
He doesn't think it's just a phase.
Nope. He believes it's a persistent pattern driven by something deeper.
Okay, so he's saying even when it seems like a woman has settled down, it's not necessarily because she's changed.
It might just be due to a decline in attractiveness.
Wow, it's a bold statement.
It is, and it definitely goes against the common narrative.
So how does he explain that then?
Well, he argues that promiscuity is more ingrained in female nature than we might like to admit.
Okay, so he's digging into some pretty controversial territory here.
Yeah, he is. And to understand his reasoning, it's helpful to look at how he sees women operating in the dating game.
Okay, so how does he view that?
He believes women are master strategists.
Strategists, okay.
They never fully reveal their true intentions.
Interesting. So what kind of strategies are we talking about?
Well, he uses this term advertising.
Advertising.
Yeah, like women put themselves out there through things like social media or even just how they dress and interact.
But they let the men do the approaching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about maintaining that sense of mystery and preserving their ego.
So they're creating this aura of desirability and letting men compete for their attention.
Right, and that ties into one of his central concepts, hypergamy.
Okay, for our listeners who might not be familiar with that term, what exactly is hypergamy?
So hypergamy is the tendency for women to be attracted to partners of higher status.
Okay, and Harrison believes this is hardwired into women.
It's not just about social climbing. It's about securing the best possible resources and protection.
For themselves and their potential offspring.
Exactly. He sees it as a biological imperative.
Okay, so that makes sense from an evolutionary perspective.
Right. And he also argues that society inflates women's sense of worth, especially when it comes to beauty.
Leading to unrealistic expectations in the dating game.
Exactly. So if a woman believes she's a 10, she'll only settle for a man she sees as equally or even more valuable.
It's like that analogy he uses in the book, a woman rejecting a free steak dinner.
Right, because if she thinks she deserves filet mignon, she's not going to settle for a cheap cut of meat.
Makes sense within her logic?
Exactly. Now, one area where Harrison really stirs things up is with his views on feminism.
I was about to say, this guy doesn't shy away from controversy, does he?
Not at all. He's very critical of what he sees as the hypocrisy of modern feminism.
So how does he explain that?
He argues that it pushes for equality in treatment without acknowledging the inherent differences in responsibility between genders.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He talks about how feminism advocates for equal representation in physically demanding jobs.
Without necessarily considering if most women even want those roles.
Exactly.
So he's questioning the motivations and maybe the potential trade-offs there.
Right. He wants people to think critically about what true equality means.
And whether it's even attainable, given the inherent differences between men and women.
Exactly. Now get ready for this one, because Harrison's take on marriage is pretty wild.
Lay it on me.
He argues that it's not actually about male dominance, but rather a form of female control.
Whoa, hold on a second. That goes against everything we've been taught about marriage.
Right, but he makes a case that women hold the real power within a marriage.
So he's saying they're using their influence behind the scenes.
Exactly. He compares marriage to a job for women with the man as the provider versus a business venture for men where they're constantly investing.
So for a woman, marriage provides stability and security.
Well, for a man, it's more of a risky endeavor.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
It is, and it definitely challenges our traditional assumptions about marriage.
So are you saying he thinks men are getting the short end of the stick?
He doesn't necessarily say that outright, but he definitely presents a different perspective.
A perspective that a lot of people might find controversial.
Sure, but that's what makes this book so interesting.
Makes you think.
Exactly, and that's what we're all about here at Motivation Library.
Right, we want to challenge your beliefs and help you see the world from different angles.
And the Enlightened Species definitely does that.
It does. So if you're ready to explore some more of Harrison's thought-provoking ideas,
Then stick around for part 2 of our deep dive.
we'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back, everyone.
So we've been talking about some pretty controversial ideas.
And it doesn't stop there.
No, Harrison keeps it coming.
So in this part, he shifts gears a bit and focuses on how men can navigate this complex dating world.
Right, and a big part of that is understanding how women operate online.
Online dating.
He has a whole chapter on what he calls the digital woman.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's interesting because he argues that online dating has actually amplified some of the tendencies we discussed earlier.
Like the idea that women advertise themselves.
Exactly, and they let the men do the approaching.
He gives the example of thirst traps.
Oh yeah, those are everywhere these days.
So for people who don't know what's a thirst trap,
Basically, it's a photo designed to elicit a, thirsty response from men.
comments, likes, DMs, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And Harrison believes this is all part of the game.
It's about maintaining that illusion of desirability and keeping men guessing.
So how should men approach online dating then if women are playing these games?
Well, he cautions against taking women's social media presence at face value.
Meaning?
Even those who claim no DMs might be engaging in private messaging with high-value men.
So there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Right. It's not always what it seems.
Makes sense. And he also talks about this idea of women having an inflated sense of self-worth online.
Yeah, he argues that social media allows women to curate their image and control the narrative.
Which can lead to an exaggerated sense of their own attractiveness and value.
Exactly. He uses the example of women rating themselves as a 10, even when reality might suggest otherwise.
Okay, that ties back into hypergamy, right?
Exactly. If a woman believes she's a 10, she's going to have very high standards when choosing a partner.
And that can create a lot of frustration for men who are trying to navigate the online dating world.
For sure. Now, another interesting point he brings up is how a woman's success and achievements can actually impact her relationships.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
He suggests that for many women, success can lead to a sense of delusion.
Delusion, how so?
Well, especially if they surround themselves with yes men and people who constantly inflate their ego.
He even uses the term corporate ladder delusion
Right.
to describe this phenomenon where a woman's professional achievements kind of blind her to the realities of the dating market.
Exactly. She might start to believe that her success translates directly to the dating world.
And that might not always be the case.
Definitely not.
So is he saying successful women have a harder time finding partners?
He doesn't say that outright, but he does suggest that they often struggle to respect men.
Especially men who haven't achieved the same level of success.
Right. It's like they're used to being in control and calling the shots.
Which can create a power imbalance in the relationship.
Exactly. Now, this next point is sure to be a conversation starter.
All ears.
Harrison argues that marriage, rather than being a patriarchal institution, is actually a form of female control.
Hold up. I thought we were talking about modern dating, not marriage.
We are, but he sees these as interconnected.
Okay, so how does marriage fit into all of this?
Well, he argues that women are the true decision makers in a marriage.
Really? Even though traditionally men have been seen as the head of the household?
He believes that's just a facade.
A facade. So he's saying women are the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Exactly. And to support his argument, he points to the fact that women initiate the majority of divorces.
Okay, I can see his point there.
It's a pretty bold statement, but it definitely makes you think.
It does. Now let's talk about another area where Harrison advises men to proceed with caution.
Single mothers.
He's pretty upfront about the complexities involved.
He cautions men against diving headfirst into these relationships without really thinking about the potential pitfalls.
So what does he suggest men do?
He advises them to judge a woman's past relationships harshly.
Harshly, that seems a bit extreme.
He believes that a woman's choice of baby daddy reveals a lot about her decision-making patterns.
Her relationship tendencies?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, but isn't that judging a book by its cover?
He doesn't see it that way. He believes that past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior.
So he's saying if a woman has made what he considers to be poor choices in the past.
It could be a sign of trouble down the road.
Okay, I can see where he's coming from.
He's not saying that all single mothers are bad partners, but he wants men to be aware of the potential baggage.
The challenges involved.
Exactly. And he has some pretty strong views on what he considers to be red flags in potential partners.
Like what?
Well, one that he repeatedly mentions is promiscuity.
particularly in women who have a high body count.
Yeah, he believes that a woman's past sexual experiences can have a significant impact on her future relationships.
So he's advocating for men to be selective.
To choose partners who align with their values.
Okay, but what about women who are single and independent?
He sees that as a red flag, too.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have thought that would be a good thing.
He believes that label often masks a deeper issue.
Which is?
An inability to form a lasting connection with a man.
So he's saying they might be using that label to shield themselves from rejection.
Or maybe they're secretly relying on a network of beta males.
Beta males? Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot. What exactly does it mean?
Basically, it refers to men who are seen as less assertive or dominant.
Okay, so he's saying these women are using beta males for emotional support and validation.
Without offering any commitment in return.
So it's an unbalanced dynamic.
Exactly. And he cautions men against falling into that trap.
He wants men to value themselves.
And to seek out partners who are genuinely interested in building a reciprocal and fulfilling relationship.
Now that's something I think we can all agree on.
Definitely.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground.
A lot of controversial ground.
And in this last part, Harrison really gets into the practical stuff. You know, how men can actually apply these ideas.
How to create fulfilling relationships.
Exactly. And one thing he emphasizes through the book is self-reliance.
Personal growth.
You know, becoming the best version of yourself.
He believes that's a man's primary responsibility.
To himself.
Cultivate his skills.
Build his resources.
Develop a strong sense of self-worth.
And he's pretty blunt about it.
Yeah.
He says, a man who can't provide for himself is going to struggle in the dating world.
It's not just about money, though.
No, it's about being a well-rounded individual.
Having a sense of purpose.
So what are some of the things he recommends?
Well, he talks a lot about finding your passions.
Whether it's a hobby, a career goal,
yeah,
whatever lights you up.
And pursuing it with intensity.
He believes that drive and ambition are really attractive to women.
It shows you're not just coasting through life, you know.
You're a man on a mission.
Right, exactly.
But he also recognizes that a lot of guys struggle with that, you know, figuring out what they really want.
Yeah, it can be tough.
So he offers some advice on how to find your purpose.
Like trying new things, getting out of your comfort zone.
Introspection.
Yeah.
You know, really digging deep and figuring out what makes you tick.
And he's a big believer in taking action, you know, not just sitting around and waiting for things to happen.
Creating the life you want. Okay, so self-improvement is key. But what about the actual dating process? You know, meeting women, approaching them.
Well, this is where Harrison really gets into the psychology of attraction.
The game, so to speak.
Yeah, he talks about the importance of understanding female nature.
Those nonverbal cues, the green lights as he calls them.
Being confident enough to make a move when you sense interest.
Assertive, but not aggressive.
Right, finding that balance.
He gives a lot of practical tips on how to approach women, initiate conversation.
Even how to escalate physical intimacy.
In a way that feels natural for both parties.
It's not about using cheesy pickup lines or manipulating women.
It's about being genuine and respectful.
Creating a connection.
And one thing I really appreciate is his emphasis on emotional intelligence.
Being able to understand and manage your own emotions.
And being sensitive to the emotions of the women you're dating.
Because let's face it, men and women don't always communicate in the same way.
And that can lead to misunderstandings and conflict.
So he encourages men to develop their emotional intelligence.
To become better communicators.
To build strong emotional connections.
Now, Harrison doesn't shy away from the importance of sex either.
He sees it as a crucial part of compatibility.
And he believes it should be established early on in a relationship.
Not as a reward or a bargaining chip.
But as a way to gauge the connection.
The physical chemistry.
He even talks about that post-nut clarity phenomenon.
Yeah, where men kind of reevaluate things after sex.
And he encourages guys to pay attention to how they feel.
Because it can reveal a lot about the true nature of the relationship.
So he's advocating for honesty and self-awareness.
Being true to your needs and desires.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what's Harrison's overall message for guys who are looking for love and commitment?
He wants men to be proactive.
Take responsibility for their own happiness.
Approach dating with confidence.
And a clear understanding of what they want.
He reminds men that they have a lot to offer.
That they deserve to be with a woman who appreciates them.
Respects them.
And he encourages men to be discerning.
Set high standards.
And walk away from relationships that aren't serving them.
Love and commitment are possible.
But it takes effort, self-awareness, and a willingness to grow.
So that's The Enlightened Species in a nutshell.
A challenging read for sure.
But thought-provoking nonetheless.
Definitely gave us a lot to think about.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
And be sure to check out some of our other episodes for more insights on relationships, personal growth, and everything in between.
Until next time.
Keep learning. Keep growing.
And stay enlightened.